Been Zoom and YouTube.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I'm being asked to. Okay, yeah.
Is it working though? That's the thing.
Let's find out.
Okay. Zoom and YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, we're in. We're in. It's looking good. I think we're in. Are there people here though? There's one person watching. Is that one of us?
Maybe me, yeah.
So a quick look. Can you hear me okay, Daniel?
Yeah, I can hear you fine, Jamie.
I
See
think
you.
that this is a different Earl, so we're gonna have to reshare this. So let's sorry about this, but we're gonna have to reshare it. So let's reshare this Earl on if you do it on Twitter, I'll do it on YouTube. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Grand.
just straight from the YouTube page that is streaming on currently. There we are.
Okay.
Oh no, hang on a second. Six people are watching it. So where are they
Hey.
from? Is it a different Earl? I think it must be, mustn't it? It is. Okay. I vote sorry, but we have had to use a different stream. Click here for the live episode. Okay. So I'm going to delete this post on thingy as well. Delete that. And I'll send it via Patreon as well. Have you shared it on Twitter?
Not yet. Give me the new link.
Have I not? Oh, you can just copy it straight from it's just the Earl on the YouTube page.
Okay.
Just copy it straight from just
Hey.
the Earl on the YouTube
Yeah.
page.
I see. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, there we go. I'm just showing it for our Patreons as well now and deleting the old ones so that people don't get confused. Dear, oh dear.
Hey. Yeah. I see. Hello, everybody.
Okay. I'm just trying to share it around as much as possible. Okay. I think I've shared it round. What a palaver, eh?
Hmm.
Reverend live stream. Join here now.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find the link where I can do the share. It hasn't
Just
come up.
copy, literally just copy and paste the
I've
YouTube.
got it. No, I've got it. You're right. That's fine.
All
Yay.
right. Okay. Flippin' heck. So stressful, isn't it? Like you set everything up, everything seems to be working, and then you click the button and it says, it's not working. Ridiculous. Hello, everyone. Good to see you. Welcome to Irreverend live stream. I'm sorry if you've had to migrate over from the other feed that is not working, but you should be all here now. Hopefully, I've reshared it everywhere, so hopefully everyone's here. Have people been able to migrate over from the fake feed, the feed that didn't work properly? I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Anyway, we're here now, aren't we, Daniel? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear me. Everyone else can hear. We've got 25 watching. No doubt we've lost some people because of our technical problems, but we are here now and hopefully people will migrate over. Yeah, we had a problem, everyone. Sorry. I set everything up. It was all working. And then suddenly it just didn't connect basically. So I've had to start a new feed entirely. And here we are. I watched a bit of a live stream from that guy who made The Chosen recently. Do you know the guy I'm talking about? Um,
Dallas somebody out.
yeah, Dallas Jenkins, I think his name is. But at the
Yeah.
beginning of that feed, he said, "What you all need to do, if you don't mind, is," well, he didn't say if you don't mind because he's American, he's much more direct. He said, "Share this video now." So then that will get the algorithm going on. So everyone who's watching, could you please share this link? So all you need to do is copy and paste the YouTube URL and share it on your social media, or send it round, text it to a few people who you think might enjoy it, or post it on a group, or put it on Facebook or something. So just everyone who's watching now, could you please share this feed? And if you are not subscribed to the channel, the YouTube channel, and you're watching on the YouTube channel, please do subscribe to the channel right away. This will be really helpful in terms of getting the algorithm going and getting people watching and getting this all working really nicely. So please share it now. Share the video. Thank you. But we are very happy to be with everyone. Irreverent YouTube Live, and also our patrons, and also people who are watching us on X as well. And I am calling it X from now on because that's what Elon Musk wants us to do, isn't it, Daniel? And so it's
It
what
is,
is
yeah.
what we should do. So yes, Daniel, somebody brought me this hat yesterday, which I'll put on now. What do you think?
Make Anglicanism great again. Oh,
I have to
America.
say, I have to say the hat. So this is for people who will listen to this. This is a "Make America Great" hat. I have to say this hat is enormous, and I'm
Mm.
wondering whether it's a sign that Americans just have much larger heads than we do. I mean this literally. Are Americans just bigger than British people, do you think? I mean, what's your view on that, Daniel?
Could be, couldn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, the hats are very big indeed. Um, Mark says, "I don't know any Christians with whom to share." You don't need to share it with Christians, Mark. You can just share it with anyone. Just share it on your Twitter feed, or just anywhere on your YouTube, on your Facebook, or just wherever you like. Just share it all over the place, and then it will be really, really helpful for us. Anyway, Daniel, it's been a while, hasn't it, since you've been around? So I thought what we could do is just catch up really about all the stuff that's been happening. I think it's fair to say there's been quite a lot that's been happening. We've got Trump to talk about, of course. We've got Welby, we've got farmers, and we've got there was this little bit more on assisted killing or whatever we're calling it now. What are we calling it, Daniel? I can't remember. Have you decided what you're calling it?
Well, yeah, it's assisted dying, isn't it? But I think it's the mission creep. It'll soon be euthanasia if we're not careful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think in the Ledbetter bill it was even said that oh, what's happened now? There's some kind of echo coming on here. In the Ledbetter bill, it wasn't even referred to as assisted dying. It was referred to as assisted. What was it? I can't remember, but it wasn't assisted dying. It was a different phrase was used, but never mind. It doesn't matter. Yeah, a couple of people are saying they've managed to migrate over, which is good. I'm sorry about this for people who have got a bit confused about the feed, but it seems like everyone's present now. That's good. Um, Daniel, should we do a little Bible reading before we start? I
Yeah.
have to say I haven't actually thought about this and I haven't written anything in the notes. So, do you have any suggestions for anything that we could do to
Well,
begin with
I think with the farmers' protest, maybe something on seeds.
on seeds? Well, yes, there's a bit of beginning of Mark's gospel, isn't there, on seeds?
There
We could
certainly
do.
is, yeah.
Let's see. Let's have a look. I've got my RSV, which doesn't have the headings in it. But we could do the thing at the Mark 4, chapter 4, verse 26. The kingdom of God is as if a man should scatter seed upon the ground. Should we do that?
Yeah.
Daniel, your sound seems. Can you speak into your microphone? Just check it's working.
Yeah. Is that sounding okay now?
Yeah, I think it might have just because you were a little bit away from your microphone. I couldn't hear you that well. Um, yeah, so let's start with a little Bible reading, shall we? And then we can go from here. Um, so then we need to say the Lord's Prayer. Shall I do that? And then I can do the reading, or you could do the
Yeah.
reading
Well, if you do the Lord's Prayer and I'll do the reading. For those who have got a Bible to hand, we're looking at Mark 4:26 onwards.
Yeah, we'll do it
I'll,
until
I'll put that in the
Yeah, stick it in the chat there.
It's in the chat there.
There we go.
Brilliant.
Tower of Adam says, make Anglicanism great again. Yes, I agree. Okay. Well, we're going to say the Lord's Prayer now in the Book of Common Prayer style. So I invite everyone to join with us as we do so. So let us pray. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
Amen.
Go on then, Daniel.
This is from the NIV, the parable of the growing seed. He also said, this is what the kingdom of God is like. A man scatters seed on the ground, night and day, whether he sleeps or he gets up. The seed sprouts and grows, though he does not know how. All by itself, the soil produces grain. First the stalk, then the head, then the full kernel in the head. As soon as the grain is ripe, he puts the sickle in it, because the harvest has come.
There we are. It's good. Good passage. I actually remember preaching on this passage a while ago because we've been through the Gospel of Mark. It was kind of over the summer, I suppose. So I'm just texting my mum the link to the YouTube because I think she's lost us. So one of
You dig back deep and remember any particular pertinent thoughts on that?
Well, I do remember that there's some interesting linguistic stuff here. So should sleep and rise. So the kingdom of God is if a man should scatter seed upon the ground and should sleep and rise night and day, and the seed should sprout and grow. He knows not how. And then I think it's this next bit: the earth produces of itself. And I can't remember the exact Greek word, but I know it's our word automatically is automated is a derivative of it. I don't know what it is, automaticos or something like that. So the earth produces of itself first the blade, then the ear, then the full grain in the ear. And I think I probably linked this passage with that bit in 1 Corinthians 3, where the Apostle Paul says, it's when in the context of that discussion about, who's been baptized by who and who follows who. And the Apostle Paul says, I planted, Apollos watered, but the Lord gave the growth. And it's this picture, which I think, the two images are really congruent with each other, that the way that the kingdom of God comes about in this world is through a combination of things, that human will and effort and resourcefulness and talent and knowledge and so on, all of these things are involved. But ultimately there's the intangible work of the Holy Spirit. So you plant, you water, you scatter seed upon the ground, you do everything, you put all the conditions in place that you can, so you pray, you preach, you share the gospel, you seek to live a holy life, you read scripture, you read devotional books, you do all of these things. But then ultimately, there has to be the work of God as well. God has to be involved in what happens. And without that, without the fire of the Holy Spirit, as it were, nothing happens. So there's this interplay between us, what we do, and the power of God, which comes in and takes what we do and sort of makes it live, as it were. So I think from memory, that's what I was talking about.
And I wonder, just putting that into contemporary stuff at the moment with the Church of England, whether that also speaks into if we over rely on human efforts in growing the church and spreading the gospel, then the danger is that we sideline the agency of God. We structure our churches to crowd out that divine grace. Um, uh, and I think that has been looking at the numerous articles about the current state of the C of E. It has been that there has been this creeping corporatism, which you could say has been doing this, has instead of the church feeling like a ground upwards movement, it feels like a top down movement now,
Mm,
and uh, there's we're constantly being sold products from the center,
mm,
which supposedly are going to, boost mission.
yeah,
And I'm not convinced that they do. I think the feeling now is that in fact they're actually hampering
yeah.
a lot of that not only energy at parish level, but maybe also hampering the spirit himself.
Mm, yeah.
Um,
That's been the big critique, hasn't it? Since Welby left, that's been, people have been saying, he's basically, I don't know what he's done, but I mean, because I've not been there like behind the scenes, but it strikes me that he's sort of bureaucratized the church and made it, sort of management, sort of structure heavy, lots of meetings, lots of kind of centralization of funds and funding bodies. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I couldn't really articulate these things because I'm not very good at articulating this sort of thing and talking in this way. But the overall effect, I guess the way it sort of come down to me in my experience is that there doesn't seem to be, and of course we talked about this on the show so much, haven't we? That there doesn't seem to be very much actual emphasis on parish ministry. So it seems to be this sort of strange situation where the people who are at the center of the church, as it were, I mean, in terms of the sort of centralized hierarchy, whether or not that's the actual central or not, this is a different story. But the people who are at the center don't seem to think that it's their job to see parish churches flourishing. They seem to see this as a sort of secondary issue, and that parish churches are, well, almost like an inconvenience. And it sort of reminds you of, in Yes Minister when they're talking about how, a hospital without any patients is much better than one with patients because it's easier to run and it's more efficient, or, a school without students or something like that. It sort of feels like that, doesn't it? Because from my perspective, the point of the Church of England is the parish churches, right? And there's very little outside of that. There's chaplaincies and stuff like that, but really, it's, what the Church of England doesn't exist so that there can be some kind of corporatized hierarchical structure and a bunch of people kind of swanning around in
mm.
boardrooms around Lambeth Palace. But that seems to be the sort of vibe that,
No, I mean, if you think that about 4 or 5 years ago, the big thing was reform and renewal.
yeah,
This was constantly going up on the PowerPoint screens of General Synod, and there were these highly complicated grafts. And so, reform, renewal, and making the whole thing more lasered into the actual need.
yeah,
Then, of course, as night follows day, was about creating these huge quangos to
mm,
create reform. Well, that may be part of the problem.
yeah,
It all becomes stodgy and blobby at the center, that you end up, and I don't want to do. There's a lot of good people in this, working in the central bureaucracy of the church, but my own personal experience has been that there's a culture which is incredibly risk averse.
mm,
Um, and how far is being risk averse from being faith adverse? Because in the end we move in faith. We as Christians, as churches, a lot of the time we have to hand these things over to God, and if there's no space to do that, then
mm,
can we be surprised when things fall apart?
mm,
Um, and yeah, you have to kind of see it to see it, really.
mm,
Uh, and uh, and I appreciate that's not that's not everybody's not everyone's going to be able to get that angle to be able to go into diocesan centres and bishops' palaces and whatever. But a lot of the language is very, very safe, very risk averse, very managerialist. Whereas maybe, say, 50, 60 years ago, a bishop might look at a parish and have a sort of gut feeling that, I think Father Jamie would do really well there.
Mm.
Now, he or she would have to go through a massive process in the name of, uh, supposed employment justice and what have you. And by that time, you might have given up and gone somewhere else.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Exactly. Yeah,
I,
Dave
I, I
Brown.
tell you what, a church warden of mine who used to be an admiral,
Mm,
um, said it's like this. He said, in the old days when you went to inspect a ship, as soon as you stepped on it, if you were a seasoned sailor, you knew. You
mm,
had a gut feeling whether this place was more than just a collection of metal and people.
mm,
Was this a company of men who were purposeful?
mm.
I said, now you would go in with the equivalent of this horrific um, naval version of Ofsted.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh, and there's no space for that intuitive feeling
Yeah.
that took years to marinate, but more often than not was spot on.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. And again, it's a very sort of, as Ian McGilchrist would probably say, a sort of left brains way of thinking about things. It's um you don't really give much place to intuition, to gut feeling, to that sort of thing. It's all about things which are much more tangible, measurable, um, precise in that kind of technical in that
Yeah,
kind of
I mean,
technical
I
way.
saw a hilarious meme that went out a couple of days ago of it said a picture of um, you know grey managerial communist leader and Xi Jinping. It was Keir Starmer. I thought, yeah, well, that kind of picks it up, doesn't it? That he is very, very sort of left brain, isn't it? Very
Oh yeah,
very
yeah.
of the process, very into the lawfare and the detail, without any sense of poetry or charisma,
No, although
or an
we've been told,
intuitive understanding of what the ordinary person on the street
yeah, although we've
might be
been told
thinking.
that he used to play the flute and something else, wasn't it? I can't remember what it was, but it was yeah. He apparently he's a musician and he's reasonably decent. But Daniel, some people are asking about us. They wanted us to talk about the. Oh, my mum is here apparently. Well, that's good. I'm pleased about that. Thanks, mum, for letting me know.
Hi,
Uh,
Gail.
yeah, Gail, that's right. Yes, my mum. A number of people are asking us to say something about the farmers because there's farmer stuff going on at the moment. So there's a big protest happening in London. I mean, please tell us exactly what you are seeing on the YouTube chat. I put our audio on so we can hear some audio. I'm watching a video now of
More tractors again around
tractors in London,
Parliament.
but the final straw, something about Starmer. They're all driving through London. There are lots of people there. I don't know how many people there, but you can see lots of tractors. I'm seeing pictures of London being totally blocked by farmers protesting against Keir Starmer's agricultural policies. I mean, it's people basically. It's
Mm.
people and tractors basically. Oh my goodness, there's a picture of tractors on the motorway, and there's a convoy I'm seeing there of about well, there's got to be at least 100 tractors, but they're stretching away into the distance. Here's Clarkson. Should we hear Clarkson? Here we go.
Sure.
Here we go.
Yeah.
If the government ends farming, which is seemingly what it wants to do,
Yeah.
where do we get our food from?
Yeah. If they go on strike, then what?
I don't think farmers will go on strike.
No.
I think there's a lot more impactful things. I think farmers can do better than that. I've got some ideas.
Keep moving back, please.
Sorry, guys.
Jeremy, for farmers.
moving. Sorry.
Keep moving, please, guys. Sorry, of course we are. Sorry, guys. Can we keep moving? How bad could this be for farmers, Jeremy?
It's the end.
In a hard right, Kenny.
If you actually stop and pay attention, it's the end.
What's next after this protest if they don't back down? I would imagine if they don't back down, I would probably say we try and do a bit more like the French do.
that was like the voice of a farmer,
Wow.
I think. Yeah.
Wow. That's extraordinary. That reminds me of the whole Canadian thing that happened there with the truckers. And
Yeah.
uh, I mean, again, it's an extraordinary moment. It's one I've been waiting for the last couple of years, actually. And where will the Church of England, officially be on all of this? That would be.
Mm.
I fear there's going to be a whistling down the wind and a silence and tumbleweed moment, um, which is ironic because the hierarchy love nothing better than putting on wellies and having selfies at field gates with cows and farmers.
Yeah.
But now the farming community is making this sort of political stance against ideology. Um, where is our mother church going to park its mothership on this?
Have you seen any
Are there
reaction
going to
from the
be
church?
any representatives from the churches
Yeah.
on these marches?
Have you heard any church reaction so far? Any bishops saying anything about the farmers? Or I don't think I have so far.
I think I have, and for all the many synods I've sat in and heard all this stuff about, we support the farming community, blah blah blah. This has to be more than waffle now. You either support them or you don't. And
Mm.
I fear that, like the Episcopal Church did in Canada when it came to the truckers, they'll actually start denouncing them from the pulpit.
Yeah, there were all there was a sort of artwork, wasn't there? I can't remember, but they were calling them
Mm.
Nazis and things like that, weren't they?
Yeah, they were closing the doors so that they couldn't use the toilets.
Well, in the churches. Yeah, well, it just shows you where the mindset is, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think exactly, if this is such a home goal, is that the Church of England actually has a not the best relationship with the farming community over the centuries. The interwar years, there were all sorts of issues with the tithes and whatnot. Um, Glebe there's been issues all around this. The church has been at times historically exacting. If there's a
Mm.
reparation to be paid, in many ways, you could argue for a reparation to the farming community from the Church of England.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, but again, I just feel our silence could be a massive home goal.
Yeah.
I mean, just I I doubt there is anything, say, on the Church of England homepage at this moment, or there's going to be anything from, say, the Archbishop on Twitter.
Well, I don't think the
We've
Archbishop.
had
Yeah.
international this and that day from that page all the time. It's sort of whatever, International Ear Loss Day or international South Pole Day, but so he clearly, Lambeth Palace has its eye on all sorts of secular causes, and this is I think a good community to affirm at this moment.
Yeah. Well, when I type in Church of England and farmers on X, nothing comes up. So, well, nothing about the Church of England anyway.
Now,
So far, nothing. And when I type it into Google, again, nothing really. Church,
because
something on the Church Times
because
charity urges.
it's the wrong side of the ideological argument, and this is the one community that can speak realistically about the environmental pressures on the net zero stuff and all of that. Um, that has centuries of wisdom,
Yeah. Some people here.
and we could easily, as a established church, just decide to ignore them because their views are unfashionable. The farming community, Jeremy Clarkson, they must be all far right. Just write it off as that. They're the wrong side of the Islington metropolitan elite.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. There's somebody in our chat complaining about Ed Davies, saying that Ed Davies spoke on the stage, even though he and his party are for net zero. I've got Andrew Lloyd Webber, who's supporting the farmers. Obviously, Nigel Farage is. He's walking through. I mean, Farage is a bit of a legend, isn't he? He's just walking through the streets here. We'd listen to him, just walking, like literally just walking amongst the people. I mean, you wouldn't get any other mainstream politician in the UK doing what Farage just walking through a bunch of hoi polloi. Amazing. And then I don't mean that disparagingly, by the way. I support these people. But then you've got Davies. I did have a video of him a minute ago, but I think I've lost it now. But anyway, Ed Davies kind of walking along, he's leader of the Lib Dems, supporting the farmers. So yeah, Richard Tice is there as well. So quite a lot of people supporting them. Yeah, but you're right, Daniel. I mean, the church won't do anything, will it? The church will just say nothing at all because, for exactly the reasons that you say, is because it won't be seen as a sort of politically fashionable cause, and it's not Marxist as well. This is a Marxist takeover, isn't it? Did you hear this? Did you hear this video of this former Labour aide? Did you hear this one?
Oh, I
Um,
think yes, yeah.
let's have a listen to it
Oh,
because it's very telling in terms of what the actual and I think this is personally I think this is a kind of quiet part out loud sort of thing, if you see what I mean. Like, he says this because, well, presumably he doesn't care about the implications of him saying it as a former Labour aide. But I bet this is indicative of the attitudes that is quite common in these kind of circles. I think it starts about here. Let's listen.
No, because most people in rural seats are farmers, but those who are farmers and small farmers won't actually be affected by this change. This is a change clamping down on tax avoidance. I'm not surprised that Boris Johnson wants to support tax avoidance, but the Labour Party doesn't support tax avoidance, avoiding inheritance tax through this device of buying farms. And that's right. The farmers still get a privileged status for their farms, and I think that may or may not be right. I'm personally in favour of doing to farmers who want to go on the streets, we can do to them what Margaret Thatcher did to the miners.
So just to be clear, John, you would beat them up?
No, close. I mean, there's an industry we could do without.
So, okay, all right. So this got weird. So you would do to farmers what Margaret Thatcher did to miners, which was, and she used very heavy-handed police tactics, followed by what? Putting them out of business.
If people are so upset that they want to go on the streets and spray slurry on them, then we don't need the small farmers.
Right. Okay, John, I'm not sure that's a particular... You were, just to clarify, you were a former Labour special advisor, possibly emphasis on the word former there. But just to go on, Ed Miliband, I mean, Boris Johnson, I put it to him, are you Ed Miliband in a wig? He said no. But, I mean, Ed Miliband has already spent the entire black hole on carbon capture, £22 billion worth for the North East, made by a Norwegian company. So none of that money initially will go to a British company. He also...
Going to talk about the net zero stuff. Well, that's related, obviously, because, the justification for this... this tax upon farmers is to do with this, fictional £22 billion black hole. So he's talking there about the way that Miliband has basically already spent the equivalent amount of money on net zero, and whatever it is, wind turbines or goodness knows what. But do you know what I mean, Daniel, about that sounding like the quiet part out loud? I mean, that seems to me to be probably the attitude of a lot of people. They won't say it on TV because it will obviously be politically unpopular, but that's the kind of thing that we're facing here with these people who actually don't care, and they'd actually prefer to put these farmers out of business, so they can take their land and do what, build a solar panel farm or a wind farm on them or something like that.
Well, again, the historical precedent has been that communist regimes have tended to do this sort of aggressive collectivization of farms, put in idiots, demonized those who've been there for centuries, who have a real intuitive feel of the land, put in somebody with a clipboard, and the whole thing falls apart, and you end up with mass starvation.
Yeah.
Mao did it, Lenin did it, Stalin did it, and part of it is pure vitriol,
Mm.
um, and and that these small communities are very vulnerable to these types.
Mm.
Um, Part of it is the bureaucratic managerial mindset that cannot, from its leafy suburbs, even begin to imagine what it is like to run something like a farm. Um, did you see the Terry Christian comments yesterday? This
Oh
twit.
yeah,
It's
I was literally
absolute
just trying to think of that.
vile
Yeah.
comments about, oh
Yeah.
well,
I'll look it up. Go on, carry on. But
um, and it has to be pointed out to him that actually, if they do get sold, they're probably going to get bought up by large corporations,
yeah. So
and they're not
he
going to be
says,
paying the same tax because corporations don't die.
yeah. Well, he says here, so it's based on this tweet from No Farmers, No Food, and he says, so basically it's about this farmer. This farmer in East Yorkshire could be left paying a £600,000 inheritance tax bill under the Labour government's new farming tax rules. And then Terry Christian's retweeted that. Who is Terry Christian, by the way? Just so we can know who this
He
guy
was
is.
very much in, wasn't he, in the
Yeah,
90s
like a
as
media
a kind
personality.
of channel for
Yeah.
youth presenter.
Yeah. I know who he is. When you see his picture, you recognize him even if you don't know the name. Anyway, he's written, poor bloke, farm worth 12 million quid, and so will pay 600 grand inheritance tax, but can do it over 10 years. Imagine how we'd all struggle inheriting on 11.4 million quid. Should do a GoFundMe page. I don't know how I'll sleep worrying about them paying a share. And then he's written in brackets, fair share, 40% of everything. I mean, it's just it's not really getting the he's not really
Yeah,
grasping the issue there, is he, financially?
Richard here has reminded us they used to present something called the Word. I mean, clearly Christian doesn't know one end of a spade from a pitchfork. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is, as a vicar of rural parishes as well, is that you go and see these farming communities, and they are with very small resources, very small incomes, are performing miracles, living something often near the minimum wage. And of course, yes, they got these acres and acres of land, but you can't just, it's like you and I being said, oh, we're multimillionaires because we're sitting on vast ecclesiastical buildings.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
if we just sold them all,
We could
wouldn't that be
pay our
great?
tax, yeah. It was, yeah, it's like saying, well, okay, so you're going to pay, some kind of tax on your church building, but it's okay because your church building's worth, well, how much my church building worth? I don't know, like 30, 40 million pounds, probably this land with all the buildings, maybe more. So that's okay. You can just sell some of that. So, okay, so what am I supposed to do? Like sell half my churchyard or sell the hall or what you can't do anything, can you? So you those are your assets. Those are the things that actually produce the whatever it is. In the case of farms, that your assets, your land, your machinery, all of that stuff, which your money is tied up in, that produces the food, which produces your income. And often for farmers, it's hardly any income anyway. They make, the amount of money they actually make at the end of the year is often it's almost nothing or less than nothing. So they
Yeah,
can't pay a tax bill of 60 grand a year for 10 years. It just is not going to work, is it? Because they don't have 60 grand a year. I mean, that's what you could say. It's like, imagine just apropos of nothing, you had to pay 60 grand a year in tax. Just imagine, and that's alongside all the other tax you pay, all of your other outgoings. You just had an extra 60 grand of tax to pay for a year for 10 years. That would be utterly crippling for you if you were trying to run a business off your assets, off of your material assets. You'd have to sell them unless you were making millions of pounds a year, net of everything else, which farmers clearly don't. It's going to be crippling. So it's just ridiculous argument.
Sally here said Clarkson's farm really opened her eyes to the reality of farming. I haven't watched the diddly squat thing. Have you watched
Yeah,
any
I've
of
watched the whole
that?
thing. Yeah, I've watched it all. Yeah, and it's I've watched all three series, and yeah, feel exactly the same as Sally does. Yeah, it really does. It really does show you the reality, in a big way. Particularly this thing about margins. You know, so Clarkson, obviously, it's a different kind of. It's just sort of it's partly fictional, isn't it? Because it's all funded by Amazon, and who knows what the financial figures really are. But assuming there's something approaching what's normal, making a profit on a farm is really, really difficult. And many years farmers don't manage it. And most farmers, I would say, I don't know about most, but certainly many farmers now have to diversify. So they have to have Airbnbs, in the outhouses.
Mm.
They start restaurants, they start farm shops, they sell their produce to local shops and restaurants, because if they just relied on farming, they wouldn't make enough money to keep the farm going. So that's the financial situation they're in. So then if you have a situation where the government comes in and says, when the oldest generation dies off, then you are going to pay, 60 grand a year in tax for 10 years, that is going to destroy these farmers. In Clarkson's farm, there's this, I remember there are these I think it's a couple, a husband and wife who literally come into their farm shop. I think that's right. I think that's right. They come into the farm shop with their produce and they're literally selling them, bottles of milk and eggs and stuff like that. Because this is the difference between their farm surviving and their farm not surviving. Literally the people who own the farm going around selling milk and eggs to local shops because their farms don't make enough money. So and they've got to constantly apply for grants and funding and things like that just to keep the thing ticking over. So with this inheritance tax, it is hard to see it as anything but a deliberate attempt to destroy these farms. I mean, what else could it possibly be? There's no real need for any of this. We all know that this is just
Mm.
bullshit. This stuff about the 22 billion pound black hole. This is just a complete lie. I mean, look at all that money that Ed Miliband is spaffing up the wall on net zero, as if this, you know, I mentioned before a couple of weeks ago when I was on with Tom, 400 billion pounds we spent on COVID, 400 billion. And yet we're being told in order to plug a 22 billion pound black hole, we have to do this to farmers. It's
Mm.
absolutely ridiculous. It's completely implausible. The logic makes no sense at all. It's an attack on farmers. It's an attempt to
Yeah,
destroy
it's very
farmers.
difficult not to perceive it as vindictive. And it's extraordinary that the Labour government doesn't understand that what it's doing will be perceived as vindictive more than just simply hard choices that we all have to. It's very difficult to take that on board as well when they're all seen getting free gifts and tickets to Taylor Swift and
Yeah, private, yeah, company boxes at Arsenal.
company
Yeah,
boxes and
yeah, but
free clothes
he
and free
had to do that.
glasses.
Starmer had
And
to do that. He had to sit in a company box or a corporate box at Arsenal because otherwise he wouldn't have been able to go and watch Arsenal. So we should all feel very sorry for him for that reason, Daniel. He
mm,
had to. He had to. It would have been unsafe for him to go to his normal seat in the stands. But let me tell,
again,
but I
it's
just, well, I was just going to say, just on that, Daniel, like I am a member of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, right? Which means that you have the privilege for paying an annual amount of money. You have the privilege of being able to buy tickets. So when you try and buy tickets for a game, the tickets can often cost 100 quid each, right? You go into a queue of like 30,000 people. So you have to pay the money just to get into the queue. And then inevitably you never get tickets because they're massively oversubscribed. And so Starmer presumably he's got like a grace and favor season ticket, presumably. So where he can just go to any game he wants to at any time ever. Right. But that's not good enough for him. He has to have a corporate box because why? It's unsafe for him to be in a stand in Arsenal. And like he's literally complaining about this as though he's at some kind of disadvantage. When everybody else in the world, every normal person has to go through the kind of thing that I go through, where you pay an annual fee just to buy tickets, and then you can't even get the bloody tickets anyway, because there are thousands of people trying to get them. So it's just an
mm.
absolute joke. Sorry, carry on.
No, I was going to say it reminded me of again in the Soviet days that party members, aka Animal Farm, needed all their own particular privileges. And that that there were motorway lanes just for higher party functionaries
Yeah.
because they deserved it. There were better holiday homes. There were all sorts of treats and things, and it just shows the the fallacy really of uh, the kind of communist socialist mindset. Uh,
Yes.
I mean,
Would
here's another one in terms
go
of the
on?
farming community. So, I mean, someone's put on here, we all really need to buy local. Um, but if the government increases the national insurance for employees, that
Mm,
really hits small companies hard, small shops. I've
mm,
got this additional cost suddenly. Well, that's going to be passed on down to the customer. So that makes competing with the supermarkets who can absorb these costs much easier.
yeah.
That makes it conversely harder for the farmer to negotiate, a favourable price
Yeah.
with local communities. They're then at the mercy of the four big supermarkets who, from all accounts, deal with them very aggressively.
Mm,
You
mm,
can come back at a meeting with some grand supermarket like Tesco, feeling you've been completely ripped off.
mm,
Um, and it's that inability for the government to see this, to have that kind of tender vision, really, to understand that this is a community which has a very, very high suicide rate.
mm,
One of our dearest friends, her husband is a farmer, took his life
mm,
a few years back. Uh, you know, you can see it. You only have to just go out and see it. You don't have to watch Jeremy Clarkson.
mm.
Just go off the beaten track and see that these places. This is a really heroic job. This is the kind of, particularly if, say, you're into cattle farming, you're barely going to get a holiday. I buried someone a few years ago who, at the age of 90, he never took a holiday in
Yeah.
his life.
Yeah.
He got up 5 o'clock every morning, milked the cows, did that on his wedding day, did that the next day, and dropped dead in his 90s.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a vocation, isn't it? It's a vocation.
Yeah.
It's a way of life. As you say, it's a set of skills, many of them intuitively learned, that are passed down over generations. And this soulless Marxist Labour government are seeking to utterly destroy this industry. Have you seen that image of Keir Starmer in his private jet or whatever it is?
I know.
Apparently he's in
Dr. Blofeld. No,
Yeah,
it's
apparently
just
he's in Brazil at the moment while this is going on. I'm trying to find an image of it so I can look at it while I'm describing it to you. But essentially, it's this kind of completely sort of clean aesthetic, isn't it? This sort of silver and black aesthetic. Him in his sort of soulless grey suit, looking. I don't know what he's looking at, a file or something like that. There's no one seated at the table with him. It looks like a kind of mirror, and it's just it's the
mm,
perfect kind of visual encapsulation of Starmer, which is just that there's no personality. Oh yeah, this is it. I've got it on Nick Dixon's feed. He writes, this photo captures the essence of Starmer, soulless, joyless, grimly executing some grey and evil task. I mean, that is absolutely right. Let me see if I can.
he's going through a list of podcasts to be
Yeah, once
liquidated.
he's planning on destroying. There it is. Can you see that? There it is. There.
Yeah.
Can you see that? Yeah, he's
What?
looking
Why
at.
would
Well,
you publish that? I mean, what? What in?
why would you photograph yourself doing that? I mean,
Yeah, I find that bewildering.
can you imagine doing that? If you were,
Mm,
if you were in a private jet, destroying a bunch of farmers' lives and taking away pensioners' winter fuel payments and doing everything
mm.
that and they're just publishing a picture like that of yourself, which just reeks of kind of
Sort of, it looks like
privilege.
Eric Honecker, as that that feel, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. YC on the you see that that's quite a good comment then. He's just checking off the what does that say? His list of personality traits: psycho checklist, superficial charm, grandiose sense of self-worth, pathological liar, con man, lack of remorse, callous slash zero empathy, parasitic lifestyle, lack of realistic long-term goals, impulsivity, irresponsibility, failure to accept responsibility for one's own actions. Yeah, well, there you go. So anyway, that's a good photo. How long do you think Starmer's going to last, Daniel? What would be your guess?
It was a though it was a wide victory, I think it was a very shallow victory. You know, they've created an enormous amount of marginals. I think more marginals than ever before, and I
Yeah.
think that maybe this is the pattern of elections for the next few generations. Is that we have these sort of swings between massive majorities. So I would think he's going to struggle to get to win the next one if he
Oh,
carries
well,
on like
yeah. I
this.
mean,
But yeah, you wonder what sort of thing will come, what things being put under the carpet, what revelation,
well,
is there a
do you know that there's a, I mean, we probably shouldn't say what it is, but everyone probably, if you can find it out on Twitter pretty easily. Do you know about this thing that Farage has mentioned? Have you come across this?
yeah, I saw that a couple of days ago, and I wondered if is there a kind of gotcha moment that would bring him and the whole thing crumbling down. I mean,
Well, if this thing is true, do you know what it's supposed to be?
I can guess.
Yeah. So it's associated with the Southport thing. I don't think there's no controversy in that because that's what's been said by people like Farage and things like that. But if that were true, I think that would probably bring him down. The political capital, they've spent all their political capital so quickly, haven't they? Like when they came in, it was the winter fuel payment thing was awful. And I think there was something else as well, wasn't there, before the budget? I forget what it was. But anyway, by the time it got to the budget, they had basically no political capital left. And then they've done this. Well, I guess there was the riots, wasn't it? And the way that he handled the riots in this sort of heavy-handed way. I think that on the whole, that was unpopular. Then you got the budget, this thing with farmers. And if that other thing comes out and it makes it seem like he was basically trying to cover his own backside through his heavy-handed response to the riots, I think that could be the end for him. He's obviously got no sort of political ability, does he? He's not a politician, so he doesn't know. He doesn't seem to understand that you have to maintain a certain level of um, popularity, and you have to have a certain level of the will of the people with you, in order to actually continue as the party leader and as the prime minister. So I don't know. He's going to. I would guess that he's not going to survive very long, particularly if this story comes out. As I understand it, it can't be spoken about because it would influence the ongoing legal case. But once that's over, presumably it will be able to come out, and that could create a huge problem for him. So yeah, I don't know. It's
Although these types can be very intransigent,
yeah, yeah, it's true.
Boris was taken down by cake.
Yeah, yeah,
But that, Boris is Boris, and there was always, I think, a fragility to his premiership.
mhm.
Um, uh, and people were out to get him, and it became very personal. But I think if you don't have a personality, then what are you attacking?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. That's right. Any good comments here? A number of people don't like Starmer. A number of people know what. Oh yeah, the Chancellor lying about her previous job. Apparently, I haven't actually looked into this, but the Chancellor apparently wrote something on, what was it that she wrote on her CV that wasn't true? Do you know?
I think it's the number of years that she was an economist
Right. Okay. What she said, she was an economist for more years than
for
she actually
10
was.
years when it may have been, it could be argued to have only been 6.
Right. Okay.
Um,
Father Robert from St Agnes, Kennington Park says, "Nice to see you live streaming."
Hello, Father.
Hello, Father. Nice to be with you as well. Yeah, so that's quite a lot of stuff we've talked about already. Should we talk? So, what was? Oh, hang on a second. I had to put this on now.
Oh no.
So, how did you? What was your sort of vibe for the US election? Did you stay up and watch it?
I did. I thought it was going to be a bit knife edge, but clearly it wasn't. There was something of a landslide victory on
Yeah.
the Republican and Trump side. Uh, it's very difficult, isn't it? Because polling nowadays, people don't. It's clear that people are shy conservatives when it comes to giving their actual voting intentions to polling companies.
Well, it's either that or that the polls are all orchestrated by leftists
Mm.
who design the polls in order to get certain results. So, like I think it was Iowa, wasn't it, which is one of the main swing states. I don't know if you remember the day before. I think it was the election. There was this massive poll that came out, which apparently showed that Kamala Harris was going to win it by 4 points, and then Trump won it by something like 16 points or something like that. I mean, they're not worth the paper they're printed on, these polls. They're always nonsense. So yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but carry on.
Yeah, so that was really interesting to see how decisive the election was in terms that the Republicans won the Senate, the Congress.
Yeah.
He won the popular vote, and then got a majority in the Electoral College. I mean, wow, that's about as complete as you could get. I feel he's a different, more mellowed, more creative personality than maybe he was in 2016. Less
Mm.
antagonistic, and probably has a far better team.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think this is someone who's a natural politician. And maybe that's a good, a lot of people would say that's a very good thing.
Mm.
But you still have to know something of the landscape. And I suspect the first term was one where he had to go through an enormous amount of shockwaves.
Mm.
I mean, folks don't appreciate, I say, here in the UK, just how big the Washington government is. The federal government is an absolutely huge employer. I think they have more flexibility than we do in terms of hiring and firing. There's in the more recent years been questions about the British civil service is a very strange beast, very
Mm.
antiquated. I mean, now seems to be very much ideologically leaning into a sort of progressivism. And as a minister of state, you can find that you can probably only sack one person in your department.
Mm.
And so you don't have the control that, say, someone who, if you've got a company, if you're in charge of a sector of industry, you've got your hands on the levers of power.
Mm.
And I think what might surprise people to know is that if you're in charge of, say, the UK government, it's actually very hard to hire and fire people.
Mm. Yep.
You can make lots of laws and lots of policies, but actually doing things and getting things done is another thing. Now, it strikes me that the new American government is much more minded to follow through on that and get that right in the way that the Argentinian government seems to have got that right, and is enjoying an economic boost on the back of that.
Mm. Yeah, well, you've got Elon Musk, haven't you, starting up the Department of Government Efficiency. I don't think that department existed before, presumably.
I think the idea is to sack about a third of the government, isn't it?
Yeah, sack about a third of the government. Um, so yeah, I mean, it sounds like a good idea. He said he's bringing out some merchandise as well, and he seems quite excited about that side of things. So, I mean, I think they actually arranged that on there. You know, they did that live stream on Twitter. I think they actually arranged it on that conversation because it sounded like it was the first time they'd spoken about it. And Elon Musk said, "Oh, you know, if you'd like me to do X, Y, and Z," and Trump talked about that thing about employing people on. Did you hear the Joe Rogan Trump
Mm.
interview? Yeah, he spoke about that then. He said you have to employ something like 13,000 people or something like that when you become a president. Obviously not directly each one, but you're essentially responsible for it. But I think he was quite, you know, Trump. I mean, I don't think humble is the right word, but definitely quite reflective on that interview because he was essentially admitting that he hadn't hired the right people the first time around and that this was actually crippled his administration. I mean, obviously there were other things, like he didn't have such a great election result as he had this time last time, but he didn't really know what he was doing, did he? He came from nothing politically, and then he's had to learn. But he seemed, I think now he won't make the same mistake again, and he'll hire the right people, and you know the whole thing will be a lot. He'll be
I
able
mean,
to.
I think the difficulty in many ways is long term economically. Is a country like America to reindustrialize the Rust Belt.
Mm,
Um, I'm not sure you can just purely do that on tariffs. That, but it's a big job.
yeah,
It's a big job, and clearly the progressivist side on the political left has just given up with that as an
mm,
idea.
yeah,
Um, and we can see that today in that, but the government is making big soundings once again with China, which is essentially about outsourcing. And
mm,
Miliband, I think a few days ago, was waffling on about where we're going to get all these. Well, there's such an urgency that we may have to deal with China in, purchasing solar wind farms and panels and what have you. So
ridiculous.
um, we can turn a blind eye to their
Yeah,
ethical practices and
yeah, and the fact that I
labor
mean,
camps and what have you,
yeah,
because the planet deserves it. So a little bit of slave labor ain't so bad, kind of thing.
yeah,
Again, you think, crikey, this is coming from the country that ended slavery,
yeah, and also
and we're
China
now
is.
actually engaging with a country that is using low cost labor and slavery. Because it's green, so it's okay. It's
Well,
okay to
but the
do that.
China is building two power plants a week anyway. So, you know,
Mm.
it's the whole thing is an absolute. I mean, what can you say about it? It's such an absurdity. It's absolutely crazy, ridiculous, mad. I mean, are they mad though, or they're just does Miliband actually think that he's saving the planet? I mean, I suppose he must do, but these people are delusional. You know, what's the point in buying wind turbines from China when China is building two coal power plants a week? I mean, honestly, it doesn't, it just is completely senseless. If this whole narrative is true, it doesn't matter how many wind turbines you buy from China. They're building power plants, coal power plants, which means that this will, you know, be pumping endless amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which would have that effect on global warming. As I say, I don't really believe this narrative. Well, I don't believe this narrative, but if it were true, it would just be completely self-defeating because you're giving them money to buy their to build their power plants. You know, it's just what's the point?
No.
Anyway,
But in countries like America and ours, I think the economic miracle is going to be trying to um, re trying to get people back to making things,
yeah,
rather than sending bits of paper around or having jobs which are about um, interfering with everybody else.
yeah,
And that cultural shift is quite tough. I think it's possible, but it's boy, is that's gonna need some effort and imagination to be able to pull that off. And and you can see how we're already going down the wrong track by the way that the government is treating, is demonizing so many, including those who are in, in the private sector or farming, giving great rewards to the public sector. It's not the way to go about things. And there's a mental health thing as well, I think, that you can see, particularly with men, where we are happier creatures making things, being hands-on. And if all of that is sort of poo-pooed and demonized, and the job that you want has been outsourced to somewhere else around the world, you're going to start going down a dark path in your own sense of well-being.
Yeah. Well, that's why the Democrats have completely lost the whole of the middle of America, isn't it? Because they devastated the local economies, and
they've got no one who is the equivalent. I mean, this morning Musk has put out that pictures of two of these rockets landing, without a gantry to support them, little feet coming out. I mean, this is every boy's dream.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's exclusive to boys, but it's every boy's dream is to be a rocket engineer, to build things, to see that kind of that sort of thing, and to not see that as a second-class career. I mean, that's inspiring, and that needs probably to go on steroids to kind of change the culture that moves a lot of the professional class, back into apprenticeships and real jobs.
Yeah, for sure. Now, listen, Daniel, we probably should look towards our email of the week now, and probably finish reasonably soon. But before I do that, I'd just like to say to people who are watching this or listening, that we really do love it when you decide to support the podcast. So basically, we have listeners supporting this podcast, so we don't have advertisers or anything like that. You can join us on Patreon, where you get all the episodes early, and you get our bonus podcast, which is called Uncollared, where we chew the fat about all kinds of things. It's a good podcast, I think. Weekly podcast, most weeks anyway. And you can join us on Patreon for as little as £1.50 per month plus VAT in the UK. So it's not very much money. So if you go to our website, revenpod.com, and click on the red button, the big red button which says Patreon on it, you can become a patron today. We really do rely on that money to run the show. I live off the money I make through podcasting and writing. I have a house which the church gives me to live in, but they don't give me any money for my vicaring job. So this is how I make money. So please do consider that if you'd like to, or you can buy us a coffee. Same website, revenpod.com. Click on the big yellow button. The other thing I wanted to say to folks is that I'm actually taking some annual leave from Thursday this week. So, if people listen to this on Friday, so the day before this is coming out. So I'm going to be off next week. So I don't think I'm going to make a main episode next week. I might, I'm having a bit of sort of creative time. So I might feel, inspired to make one of my response videos if I sort of feel like it, but there won't be a main episode. So next week, there'll be no episode, main episode anyway. There might be some like little bonus thing. So please do support us if you can. And don't be shocked or amazed or appalled or anxious if you don't pick up the episode next week, because it won't be there. Okay, so Daniel, I'll read this, shall I? And then you can respond. So this is from Johnny, and this is on Justin Welby. So he's addressed it just to me, but I'm sure it's to everyone. Dear Rev Jamie, apropos of your recent podcast about Mr. Welby, to whom I would prefer to refer to as Mr. rather than anything else, I do not for a moment think that the only reason for his for resigning was child abuse secretary and lack of action issues. I'm not sure what that means. But yeah, we'll get the gist. Of course, that has to be brought up, but Welby has been a letdown. Lockdowns, masks, Jesus would take the vaccine, wokery, LGBT issues, get marriages, What does get marriages mean? Get marriages and vagueness on the issue about which bishops voiced that he did not speak on their behalf, GAFCON, etc. Net zero nonsense, climate nonsense, and commercializing some church organizations, but not others, with great infrastructural changes, etc., etc. So all in all, it was a bunch of letdowns of Christians. I say this as a member of the C of E myself, though I have come to the conclusion that one has to believe in the message and not bad messengers, of whom we have plenty. Through listening to you in Dellingpole, I came to learn about the Way of the Pilgrim book, and my prayer these days is only, Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. My frustration has been so much and so high with the church that I took the plunger, presume that means a plunge, and bought the original of the attached from Bob Moran. This is what I think of Mr. Welby and what happened to Christians during the pandemic. I trust that you and yours are all well, Rev Jamie. So I haven't posted it in the document, the picture, but it's essentially this picture of a cleric in front of I think it's in front of a cross, praying in front of a cross in a church, but the cross is casting a shadow in the shape of a vaccine. So that's what that's referring to. Glad Johnny found the Where the Pilgrim book. Do you know the Where the Pilgrim, Daniel?
I've heard of it. I know of the Jesus Prayer.
Oh yeah, but
I think I read it some years back. It's been a while since.
I've literally got it here on my desk and I've been rereading it. It's such a great book. It's just one of the most spiritually encouraging books I've ever read. I've read it multiple times, but it's not just about, I mean, it is encouraging if you use the Jesus Prayer and if you're into that, but just in general, it's just a wonderful, wonderful book. So I'm glad that Johnny found it. But yeah, any response to that, Daniel? I think that's making a good point there, isn't it? That this is kind of, I spoke to somebody the other day who said, when you consider the amount of things that Justin Welby could have resigned for, this is actually probably not, I mean, I'm not saying it's not a big deal, but he could have resigned for all sorts of things previously. So it's interesting that it was this sort of oversight on his part, but not something that he sort of actively did that has effectively brought him down. I don't know if you have any views on that.
Was it Will Moore who wrote a piece on The Spectator a couple of days ago saying that he successfully united the Church of England, unfortunately against him? And that the letter that was put out as a petition earlier last week had every kind of faction of the Church of England clearly, voices from those sort of tribal parts of the Church of England agreeing that this was his time to go. So, but I suspect also, this has been a long time coming, that he hasn't. I know it's not about making friends in this sort of job, but surely it's also about making allies. And I think this is an archiepiscopal ministry that had lost its allies over time. And through one way or another had alienated itself from so many factors. He's not truly a liberal. He doesn't really fit the shoe of an evangelical. He's certainly not an Anglo-Catholic. He's not really in line with HTB. Half the Anglican communion don't want to be in communion with him. So, he's become this very kind of isolated figure. And I think you have to align yourself with somebody in the end. You just can't align yourself with yourself, there's a lot of people who really had it out for him, for one reason or another, justified or otherwise. And I think within a couple of years, 2-3 years of him starting off, I think the wheels started to fall off this. I had great hopes to begin with, I have to say. I thought, this is a really interesting person. The outsider has sort of got the job, and some of the things that he was initially pitching for, a kind of new monastic revival in the church, sounded interesting. His experience with HTB, his openness to some aspects of Catholic spirituality, his Benedictine spiritual director, and all of this seemed, it was an interesting mix. And then it started to fall apart. certainly during COVID, I think a lot of us felt betrayed,
Mm, mm.
that there was a much more robust and heroic stance um, that was lost.
Mm.
And the man that seemed to emerge out of that at the end of the lockdowns seemed a sort of grey, diminished figure.
Yeah, he certainly did, didn't he? He seemed to have changed significantly. I mean, he was never the most dynamic of people, but then by the end, he seemed like a kind of worn out husk, really, didn't he? Sort of shell.
Whereas I think Rowan, Rowan knows he's theologically is comfortable in his own skin.
Mm. But it
Yeah,
did wear him out as well. I mean, he
yeah.
retired when he was 63, didn't he? Um, Somebody's written he spent his time as Archbishop desperately trying to hold the Anglican communion together. Maybe his demise says more about the CV than about him. I feel sorry for him, and I'm a Roman Catholic. Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with that, and I think that that's the same for Rowan. You know, I've heard Rowan talking about that kind of thing, um, but it just shows you that this method of approach doesn't work. You can't have, it's a house divided against itself cannot stand. You can't have a situation where you have a church or any organization that has different goals, different values, and antagonistically so within the same organization. It just doesn't work. It will eventually collapse, and that's what we're seeing in the Church of England. It's not going anywhere. Everyone's pulling in a different direction.
Well,
And
it plays into Newman's charge, doesn't it, of Cardinal Newman in the
yeah,
19th century, who accused the Church of England of semi-Arianism, which is, from what I can gather, it's not so much about the heresy, but it's this idea that, well, if we just all hold together, we can keep the Arians under the wing because we don't, we'd feel terrible about leaving them.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, it doesn't have to be like that. The Archbishop of Canterbury doesn't have to approach things in that way. The Archbishop of Canterbury could say, look, these are our formularies. This is the doctrine and the liturgy of the Church of England. And this is what we're going to promote and we're going to stand by. And, if you don't like it, tough, and I'm not saying that that would be the last thing would be what you'd actually say, but that would have to be your attitude. We believe in certain things, we are going to proceed in this manner in faith that if we do X, Y, and Z, that we hope that God will bless our ministry. You can't have this situation where the main thing that you think about is, well, I don't want to upset those people over there, so I won't say this, and I don't want to upset those people, so I won't say that. And so what's left for me? What option is left for me? What is available on the table for me to say, given that I might upset those people if I say this, I might upset those people if I say that. It's a ridiculous way of operating. And you can see it as well. It's completely unconvincing when you actually see this guy trying to operate in this way. Everybody knows what's going on. Everybody knows it on the liberal side and on the orthodox side. Everyone can see this guy is just trying to please everyone and nobody's happy. It's just not the way. It's not the way. I can't think of another Can you think of another organization in the world that's run like this? I mean, I can't. Where basically the main thing, like he said on the Rest is Politics podcast, you don't ever kick anyone out because it's all about just embracing everyone. So it's like, well, but what other organization operates like that, where there are literally no rules? It doesn't matter what you believe, it doesn't matter what you do, just everyone's. I mean, obviously, it's never going to be that because there'll always be a line, but essentially, unity comes first, being included comes first, and it doesn't matter what you believe, it doesn't matter what you do. I can't think of another organization that runs like,
Mm.
apart from the Church of England.
Yeah, and I suppose undergirding that as well is a consumer culture where the customer is always right. Everybody is their own pope
Yeah.
in this respect, and this if you kind of pander to this, you end up with this perpetual schisms
Mm,
within your own organization because
yeah.
there is no, in the best sense of the word, corporate vision.
Mm, mm,
If the vision is that there is no vision, if the story is that you have no story, then we disintegrate, we fall apart.
yeah. Yeah. Completely agree, Daniel. Well, listen, I think we need to call it a day there. Um,
Mm.
It's been good. I am sorry about the way that the live stream ballsed up earlier on, but we've still got the episode. We've captured it.
Yeah.
It will be released as a proper episode on Friday into our Patreon straight away. Well, at least as soon as I finish making it. And we do appreciate people being online and making comments. I do actually have somebody who said he will help us with the technical side of this. So when we do future live streams, hopefully we'll get him to help us, and these kind of things will be a bit easier. I have to say as well, I don't know how you find it, Daniel, but I like having people commenting, but it's somewhat hard to read the comments and concentrate on either what the other person is saying or on what you're saying. Do you find the same thing?
Um, yeah, so. I think it's quite buzzy as well, actually.
Yeah, it's definitely good. I definitely like it. I like the the instant feedback that you get. Um,
Mm.
Half Dan says, I saw an earlier comment that made me chuckle. Where is Elon when needed? That's the guy that wants to put a chip in your brain. He's just a puppet from a wealthy mining family. Well, there you go. That's half Dan's opinion, man. But yeah, let's leave it there, shall we, Daniel? Because I need the loo apart from anything else. So and I need a cup of tea as well, I have to say.
It is definitely live and unscripted.
Absolutely. Would you like to finish with a
But
prayer, Daniel?
yeah, well, we had my YouTube saying we had about 52, 53 people watching. So thank you for your time
Yeah.
and for your comments and questions. And I think we should definitely do this again. This is an interesting format, and hopefully you can help us in our trying to get it right, and trying to balance speaking and looking at questions and whatnot. But
Yeah.
thank you. Well, a prayer for now, blessing to conclude our time. God give us the grace to follow him and his saints in this season of remembrance when we recall those holy men and women who dragged their cross up the hill joyfully, knowing that he who asks this of them says also that his yoke is easy, his burden light. May with the saints of old we find encouragement, and may God bless us, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, now and forevermore. Amen.
Amen. Thanks so much. So thanks very much, everyone who's watching and listening at the moment. And thanks to people who have downloaded this later. Really appreciate all of you. And yeah, we will be with you next time. Until next time, keep watch.
And keep the faith. I nearly forgot then.
Excellent, Daniel. Well done. We're still on the live stream. The recording has stopped, but we are going to finish the live stream now as well. Thank you very much, everyone, for being with us. Now, you know what? This is where people are going to see my technical incompetence. So I don't actually know how to close down the live stream. That's how bad it is. So people are still watching
It's
us.
not a plug that you pull.
Yeah, I found it. Yeah, no, I found it now. It's still going on there. That's the thing. Or at least I think it is. It's hard to say. Are you still on the page?
Let me have a look. I think so.
Yeah, I'm in the control room now. Yeah, I'm in the control room. I found it. I found the control room. All right. So it's live currently. So if I go there, um, there, yeah, we are still live, and I'm going to end stream now. So thanks everyone who's watched it live. God bless. Ends. There we go. I've ended that. So 207
Yeah.
views, 60 peak concurrence.